Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And joining me, my co-host, Stephen Young of RotoGrinders, better known as StevieTPFL. And this week, we're previewing the Penzoil 400 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway here on Running Hot. Last weekend at Phoenix, Christopher Bell took his third straight win, barely nipping teammate Denny Hamlin at the line, with Kyle Larson making it an exciting three-wide finish. Also, Josh Berry came home in fourth place. So, Stevie, for me, that means I had bets on second, third, and fourth to win. And it was Christopher Bell yet again, as we should expect, right? I mean, he's absolutely dominant at Phoenix. What were your thoughts on Phoenix?
Yeah, it was nice to hit the top Toyota bet and Toyota win bet. So that was good. And I was tilted because I had Buescher at 11-1 as top Ford, and he finished right behind Berry. So I should have added Berry. I added Keselowski, Buescher, and Gregson because they were all like crazy odds. But I thought Phoenix was great. Thought it was fun having both tires, kind of gimmicky. You had to kind of save the tires, like we talked about, would be a thing. I'm still a bring one tire to a racetrack kind of person. But I thought it was good. I think the prime tires, there was a lot of passing. We talked a little bit about it last week on how Phoenix is getting a little bit or just more run down and tire wear is becoming more of a thing. So I think if we have a softer kind of middling tire, or just bring the prime or option tires and let them just have like 15 sets for the championship, that'd be fun to watch. But overall, I like Phoenix. I thought it was a great race. Bell had the best car all day. He won the race. I mean, the guy that had the best car won. He kind of squeezed Denny, and I think Denny bit his tongue at his interview. But yeah, I thought the racing was really good for a Phoenix race. I think Phoenix races are always good when we get late race cautions, but I thought this race throughout the race was better.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the two tires definitely made it interesting. I did think it was still a little hard to pass if you're on the same tire as somebody after, you got spread out a little bit from the restarts. So definitely something a little bit to work on there, because even if they all come back in Phoenix with the same tire, if there's a bunch of fall off, that's great. But if they're all falling off the same, it could still potentially be hard to pass. So I definitely would like to see, when we come back to Phoenix, fall off, but to where it is so significant that you actually have to manage that fall off, so you get comers and goers throughout the run. That would be really nice. So, but yeah, overall good race at Phoenix. And Christopher Bell now 3 wins in 4 races this season. And hey, I mean, he was one Cole Custer, kind of difficult shove away from maybe being 4 for 4 to start the season at the Daytona 500 as well. And Christopher Bell, is the driver that we're heading to Las Vegas, was the fastest in the most recent Las Vegas race as well. So maybe he'll make it 4 in a row. But let's talk about Las Vegas, Stevie. Vegas is a 1.5 mile oval, one of NASCAR's kind of classic, people call them cookie cutter tracks or whatever, but just a 1.5 mile intermediate track. So we'll be, of course, running the intermediate package, and Las Vegas is a track that we run twice a year. So Stevie, talk about racing at Las Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the 1.5 is the next gen car. We've talked about it a lot on this podcast over the last 2.5 years. It's fantastic racing. We should get the exact same thing this weekend. It should be really good racing. Vegas is one of my favorites because it's a steep track. It is getting more and more tire wear, which is great. You have to manage your stuff and still be fast. We see a lot of passing at Vegas. So realistically, I think between the tire that they've been bringing to Vegas, the tire or the fall off that we've been getting, the next gen car, it's just one of those races where we should get really good racing. We talk about it at Kansas. We talk about it at Charlotte. 1.5s have turned in with the next gen car to the tracks that we kind of get excited to watch and enjoy betting on. So, I mean, I think that Vegas racing is going to be great this weekend.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the race is going to be awesome. I mean, Las Vegas, Kansas, Charlotte, they've all put on some fantastic races. Even Texas has gotten a little bit better in the next gen car than it was in the previous generation car, the Gen 6 car. So, yeah, mile and a half tracks, especially Kansas and Vegas, though. And we'll talk about comparable tracks, but Kansas and Vegas have multiple grooves. Vegas, you can run pretty much anywhere on the track and make speed. So that's the nice thing about Las Vegas. You can go high, you can go middle, you can go low, and try to find speed. And that really puts it in the driver's hands as well. So it's a really good combination of car, aerodynamics, horsepower, and driver skill, which is why I really like these mile and a halves in the next gen car. So I did mention Kansas. Is that your only track that you're using to compare to Las Vegas? Kansas being another mile and a half. Race is kind of similar to Vegas in terms of like tire wear, or are you bringing in some other data as well?
I think both of us are going to agree that Kansas is the best comp.
Yeah.
Like hands down best comp. I'll use a little bit of Texas Charlotte data as well. I also like last year started using a little bit of Homestead and Darlington data. Not a ton, but just enough where it matters a little bit because we are getting more tire wear. And I mean, this is the same right side tire that we ran at Darlington and Homestead last year. So, I mean, Goodyear is seeing something that we've been talking about on this Las Vegas racetrack where it is aging and we are getting more tire wear. So I am going to use a little bit of Darlington and Homestead data as well, but Kansas is going to be my favorite comp, and I think you'll see that with our bets too. You and I are on a lot of the same stuff this week. So I think Kansas way up here at the top, and then just kind of using some of the 1.5 high speed type of tracks, and then Darlington and Homestead because we are using the same right side tire.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think you definitely can pull in a little bit of Darlington or Homestead, given that, like you said, the right side tire, as well as the added tire wear that Vegas has started to see over the years, right? Vegas was repaved more than a decade ago. So it's definitely getting to the point where it is starting to age a little bit. And when it ages, you do get more and more tire wear. So, yeah, I can agree with that. And honestly, I could even see pulling in, sounds a little silly, but a little bit of Dover. When I look at stats, it's more for Kansas, but when I look at stats that correlate to Vegas and to Kansas, Dover actually has had certain stats just pop up in the next gen era that correlate with Kansas and Dover. So whether it's, average green flag speed or driver rating or, average running position, those kinds of things. So don't hate if you want to like just use it as another intermediate, because Dover does use the intermediate package. So just something else you could kind of consider, as well as, if you're trying to build a sample size. But really, we're focusing on past Vegas history and Kansas as the two really big ones, with, I would say, Charlotte next, and then, some of these other ancillary tracks after that. Finally, we're here at Las Vegas. We're at our first intermediate track race of the season. Phoenix being a shorter, flatter track, mile track. Atlanta being intermediate, but using the drafting package, and of course Daytona also using the drafting package. So this is our first true intermediate. Stevie, what do you look for at the start of the year, just in terms of how to approach a new track type? Maybe some intangibles here as well.
Practice data. I mean, right off the bat, I just want to say like practice is a huge indicator for me this weekend because again, it is our first 1.5. I think last weekend can kind of give us an idea of who we think will have some speed, who maybe made improvements over the offseason. But realistically, we've had two drafting style tracks, a road course, and a shorter flat track. So here we are getting our first 1.5 of the year. So I think practice matters a lot. But I also want to look at last year's Las Vegas. I want to look at last year's, high speed intermediates that we were talking about. Vegas with the next gen car in general, because racing at Vegas definitely changed with the next gen car. Again, I think that recent data for early week bets, practice really heavy on practice data for late week bets.
Yeah, definitely. Practice is going to be huge, and Stevie, I've been in you as well. We've been putting a lot of practice stuff in, the Roto Grinders package there, getting my flags, which is field level adjusted green speed, and I do that for practice and I do it for the race. Getting that in the Roto Grinders package there, and that's going to be super helpful because we should get, cars to get some decent runs here at Las Vegas in practice, even with, compared to Phoenix, an abbreviated practice session, because they're not all running the 45-minute session. They're splitting them into the groups here. So I think that's, still going to be super important. We're going to get 15, 20 lap plus runs because it is only, less than half a minute lap at these tracks. So this is a spot where you can get, in a 20-minute practice session, you can get a 30-lap run if a guy wants to stay out there and run the whole time. So I agree that I think practice is going to be massively important, and looking at how these teams and drivers not only have speed, but also how they maintain that speed throughout the course of a longer run. So that is our Vegas preview. It is time to dive into the bets. Stevie and I are going to drive through the race stage by stage. We'll each give a pick in stage 1 as our shorter odds bet. Then we'll give another pick in stage 2 as our longer odds bet. Finally, we will race through stage 3 and end up in victory lane with our combined favorite bet for the Penzoil 400. So we are going to throw the green flag here at Las Vegas Motor Speedway and fire off for stage 1. First stage, Stevie. Interesting pick here. Obviously, when we look at Kansas and we look at Las Vegas, I think the teams that come to mind are Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs / 2311 Racing, really the Toyotas. But you're not going with any of those. Who do you got in turn 1?
I'm going with Chevy at least. I'm going to my boy Ross Chastain for a top 10 at plus 120. I got this on Hard Rock. It's minus on a lot of the books, so hopefully you have Hard Rock where you're at. But I think this one's just way mispriced. Ross Chastain has the best average finish here with the next gen car, ranks inside the top 5 in speed with the next gen car, and he's finished inside the top 10 in 5 of the 6 races and inside the top 15 in all 6 races here with the next gen car. So last year, I think he was average finish like 5.5, a lot of speed, really good decision making as far as strategy goes, which definitely comes into play at Vegas. So it's a steep track. It's a tire wear track. These are the types of tracks that I love Ross Chastain on. He just, from even when we were watching him kind of come into the sport and get chances in better equipment, the steep tracks always seem to be where Ross Chastain really just kind of separated himself. And, we watched him at Darlington multiple times, we watched him at Homestead. And I mean, even if we look at the high speed intermediates last season, he finished inside the top 10 in 4 of those 6 races. So I just really like Ross Chastain on this type of track, and getting this at plus money before we go to practice and qualifying for a guy that typically qualifies really well. I think this is a one that you definitely want to take advantage of the misprice.
Yeah, and Ross Chastain last year in the 2 Vegas races ranked 10th and 9th in my flags metric. So 10th and 9th in what I'm calling true speed, which is the 7th best average among all the drivers, that raced both Vegas races last year. So Ross Chastain definitely inside that top 10 in speed at Vegas pretty consistently. And you think back even a couple of years, he was even closer to the top there, going for some wins at Las Vegas as well, contending for wins. So definitely Ross Chastain, top 10, like that one. For my stage 1 pick, stage 1, we're going to go with Chris Buescher. Now, I couldn't wait for the podcast, and I had to give Chris Buescher top Ford out. So that line has moved beyond where I would bet it. I think the longest you can get it now is like plus 450. If it does drift back to 6-1, or if BetMGM somehow posts it at 6-1, since they have not yet posted their manufacturer odds, and usually they do by this time, but as of us recording on Wednesday evening, they have not posted it yet. But if you do see a 6-1, I'd grab Chris Buescher top Ford. Instead, we'll go with his top 10, which you can get at plus 150 at DraftKings. And I also like laddering up to a top 5 on Chris Buescher, 6-1 you can get at DraftKings. And here's my thing with Chris Buescher. And if you want to go read my article about the top Ford bet at actionnetwork.com/NASCAR, all of that will still apply. Chris Buescher last year in flags at Las Vegas ranked 4th and 8th in the 2 races. Now, people will forget that first race because he crashed on lap 26, 27, something like that, because of a loose wheel. So after his pit stop, the pit crew didn't get the lug nut on completely tight. Wheel came off and Chris Buescher crashed. But during those, 15 or 16 or so green flag laps that he did run, he was the fourth best car on speed. And it's even crazier because there was an early incident for Chris Bell, actually, Christopher Bell. And so all the cars came in and pitted on lap 11. Almost all the leaders took 4 tires, but Chris Buescher took 2 tires and was still running laps in the 80th percentile range among all the cars on the track. So he was doing just as well as these guys on 4 tires as he was on 2 tires in that first Vegas race. So very abbreviated stint. Then in the second Vegas race, again, 8th in flags, ended up finishing inside the top 10. He was the top Ford in terms of flags in both those Vegas races last year, and he finished second Ford in that second Vegas race, only because Joey Logano stole the victory on fuel mileage there. But really, Chris Buescher was the best Ford in both Vegas races. And so, flags of an average of 6, the 4th best flags among all drivers last year at both Vegas races. When you combine the 2 races, I think that means, a top 5 is certainly within striking distance. And we also have to remember Chris Buescher did finish second at Kansas in the closest finish in NASCAR history last year.
Yeah, I mean, I already bet this. I'm right there with you. I bet his top 10 at plus 160 on the Hard Rock. It's still available too.
Nice.
That's a good number. But like Nick said, if you don't have Hard Rock, take advantage of it. I'm right there with you on Buescher. I think this is an excellent racetrack for him. If we look at the high speed intermediates for him last year, I mean, he was top 5 in speed. That first Vegas race, like you said, when he was out there racing, he was top 5 speed in Kansas. And the fall Vegas race, he was top 10. He was closer to like a 7th place car. So, I mean, that's what we're looking for, right? We're looking for drivers that have top 10 speed at plus money when we're betting these top 10 bets early in the week before practice and qualifying. We want to take advantage of value. And I mean, my model is showing you could bet this down to like plus 140 for his top 10. So I'm right there with you on Chris Buescher.
Yeah, absolutely. So for our stage 1 pick, Stevie has Ross Chastain top 10 at plus 120. I'm going with Chris Buescher top 10 plus 150. There's a plus 160 out there if you can get it, as well as his top 5 at 6-1. So those are stage 1 bets. We're going to take the green and white checkered, fuel up, put on new tires, and get ready for stage 2. Second stage here, Stevie. We talked about a Chevy and a Ford. You're going towards Toyota now. What do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I love Toyota at Kansas and Vegas. I think that 2311 has been really, really fast on this type of racetrack. JGR, obviously Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin. I think like Ty Gibbs is eventually going to break out of this funk, and this is a really good 1.5 is a good week for like Ty Gibbs to break out of this funk. And then Briscoe, I mean, Martin Truex Jr. was really good on 1.5s last year, so I think they're going to have a really good starting spot bringing this car to the racetrack for Chase Briscoe. So I'm going to a winning manufacturer bet here with Toyota at plus 140. We bet Toyota for a winning manufacturer last week going back to the well. I really wanted to bet Reddick or Bell's outrights, and the books just opened them up, and they're like, hey, there's just no value in betting these. So I'm going to bet Toyota at plus 140, and I'm going to cross my fingers that Reddick or Bell like mess up in qualifying and start like 15th, and we can get them at like 9-1 or something. I highly doubt it's going to happen, but I'm crossing my fingers that it potentially happens because I think it's going to be Reddick, Bell, Hamlin against Larson and Biden for the win of this race. I think that we're going to see a classic Toyota versus Hendrick Motorsports battle for a win this weekend. And I'm getting better odds on Toyota. They have 3 of the top 5 cars here with the next gen car. I'm betting Toyota here.
Yeah, there you go. And when looking at flags last year, Tyler Reddick first in flags between the 2 races. Martin Truex Jr. third in flags between the 2 races. Larson was second. And then Bell was 6th. But in that first Vegas race, he had a lot of problems. So flags is kind of a little unreliable in that first Vegas race, but he was second in flags in the second Vegas race. So, the most recent one. And Ty Gibbs was a top 10 car in flags in the 2 Vegas races. So, Toyota putting some cars up there in the top 10. We've seen Bubba Wallace win at Kansas. Obviously, Denny Hamlin is typically strong at these tracks. Don't really know what happened to him in the playoff Vegas race. He wasn't very good, but in that first race, he was a top 5 contender. Didn't end up finishing in the top 5, but was borderline top 5 there for most of the race. So you're getting a lot of good Toyotas. But Stevie, for my stage 2, I'm still trying to get used to it. Stage 2 pick. I'm going to a different Toyota. And I'm going dumpster diving on the Toyotas, and I'm going to take Riley Herbst for a top 10 finish. You can get that at 14-1 out there at Bet365. I think DraftKings has an 11-1. And here's my thing. Tyler Reddick is a 2311 car. We know he number 1 in flags in both Vegas races last year. Bubba Wallace won at Kansas, has been a top 5 car at Vegas multiple times in the next gen era for 2311. Riley Herbst has the same equipment as those two guys that have been putting the cars in the top 5, top 10 pretty consistently at this track type. And Riley Herbst is good at Las Vegas. Dominated a Las Vegas race a couple years ago in the Xfinity Series and went on to win, and has had overall very strong showings at Las Vegas in the Xfinity Series. So there's really not a whole lot of analysis to this other than we're getting damn good equipment at 14-1 for a top 10 with a driver who's shown he can win in the Xfinity Series at this track. So I think that's, worth taking a stab on if you want to call it a funsy bet or not. But my model shows value on this. I have Herbst at 9.5% to finish inside the top 10, which is better than the implied odds at either 11-1 or 14-1. So I'm fine playing it at any of those double-digit numbers there. Riley Herbst for a top 10 finish. Curious your thoughts about that because it is kind of tough to handicap Riley Herbst in this spot.
I already bet this too. So yesterday was my birthday, and Hard Rock sent me some bonus bets, like birthday bonus bet like things. I was like, oh, I'm definitely using one of those on this because, listen, I'm right there with you. I've talked about this in Discord multiple times already that this team and this car is being underpriced in the betting world and the fantasy world. I mean, it's a full Sunny D sponsored car this weekend. There's going to be a lot of focus around him at Vegas with his family, with this racetrack. I think this is a perfect opportunity for him to get his first top 10 with this team. So I'm right there with you. 2311 has been way too good at Vegas and Kansas not to have interest at 14-1 on Herbst. And usually when we're talking about something that's 14-1, we're like funsy bets, but I'm perfectly okay throwing a half a unit on Herbst here for a top 10 and feeling really good, knowing going into the weekend that if he has any practice speed or qualifying speed, he's not going to be 14-1. He's not the worst at Phoenix, and I mean, he qualified top 20 and his numbers shot straight up. So if you're going to bet this, I think you have to bet this before practice and qualifying. But again, you and I are on a lot of the same stuff this week. I'm right there with you when it comes to Riley Herbst top 10. I think that usually, like I said, these are like funsies, and I think that he's just being underpriced because he's a rookie, but he's in 2311 equipment. And I mean, Toyota, we saw even, the legacy cars have speed last week. So I think Toyota's in a really good spot to start the season.
Yeah, I agree with you on all of that. And, Riley Herbst, like you said, looked pretty decent at Phoenix until he ended up getting caught up in one of the big crashes there at Phoenix. But that broke his 17th place streak, right? He had finished 17th in each of the first 3 races. Then he finished 37th at Phoenix. Maybe he'll finish 7th, right? To keep that 7 in the ones digit category streak going there. So stage 2, Stevie's going with Toyota to win at plus 140. And I'm going with Riley Herbst, a Toyota there, finishing the top 10 at 14-1. So we made it through stage 2. We're going to speed on through stage 3 and take the checkered flag, drive into victory lane. And Stevie, this victory lane pick, I had it in the outline. You messaged me and said, hey, I've already bet this too. Let's throw it in victory lane. So what is our victory lane pick for Las Vegas?
Yeah, I mean, preseason, I talked about how high I was going to be on Chase Elliott this year. I'm right here with you. We're betting Chase Elliott at plus 275 for a top 5. Like, I think he has the potential to be that third, like, Hendrick car up there in the mix. We saw, like, how good Hendrick was here last year. And Chase Elliott's really good at the steep tracks, too. This is a racetrack that he really can excel at. And he's kind of being undervalued again because he really hasn't had like dominating speed. We don't need him to have dominating speed for this
Right.
bet to hit. Like, could you bet his outright? I mean, you could. I'm not going to. I might after practice and qualifying, but I think this is a good spot to take advantage of it. If we look at the high speed intermediates last year, he had the fourth best average finish in those races. I mean, he was a top 10 car, and you look at the Vegas race, I mean, he got hit. I mean, Martin Truex Jr., I think it was Martin Truex Jr., lost it a little bit, and Elliott, and that's when Reddick ended up flipping on the front stretch.
Yeah.
So he was up there battling with Truex and Reddick, which was some of the best cars. And we know that he's going to be good on pit road. I think he's just being undervalued to start the year. And I'm going to be talking a lot of Chase Elliott. I know you're going to be talking a lot of Chase Elliott to start the year. And our love for the Chase Elliott train has started here in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. You look at that race, that second Vegas race last year, and Chase Elliott was seventh in flags up to the point of that wreck. So he was borderline top five car, really making moves. And I agree. I think it's going to be that Hendrick Toyota, 2311 Joe Gibbs Racing show as the battle for the top five here. And Chase Elliott, for some reason, really popped in my model this week. I was surprised by it. I'm guessing that, the couple good Kansas runs have helped for sure. A little bit of Charlotte, but Chase Elliott surprisingly popped in my model. I was blown away by how high it was on him. I was asked in the Action Network Discord about his outright, and I, like you, I'm not quite there on his outright, even though, you can get it, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 20-1, 18-1, I think is the longest out there right now. But I'm not quite there just because he hasn't really shown a ton of dominating potential at Kansas and Las Vegas in the next gen car, but he's always been right there where he's close enough. And that makes me feel okay about, at least taking him for a top five, because he doesn't have to lead to hit this bet. He can finish second, third, or fourth, or fifth. And we still hit this bet. And my model, like I said, was surprisingly high on Chase Elliott. So I'm right there with you. Chase Elliott for a top five finish. Plus 275, best out there that I've seen at Bet 365. So that is going to do it for us. Thank you for listening to the Penzoil 400 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. If you'd like to tail some of the bets we discussed today, look for the quick slip link in the podcast and video description, or go to actionnetwork.com/bet now. We'll be back next week to talk bets for the Straight Talk Wireless 400 at another somewhat similar intermediate track, Homestead Miami Speedway. On behalf of my co-host, Stephen Young, thanks again for listening. We'll see you back here next week on Running Hot from Action Network.